So it seems that LA is having, some kind of kerfuffle here. And LA usually is, but that is not surprising, right? So, what's the story? What's the story? We on? I think we got it. There it is. We're popping in there. Let's get it going. Welcome, everybody, to the Gavin Seim live show and the live Resist podcast. I just wanted to do what I hope will be a relatively quick stream. You know what I want you guys to do to help me out as you are popping in here. And good to see you there in the live. Shout out to all you guys that are here in the live stream. Drop your links to what you think are the most important stories and or videos, live streams that are happening in LA right now so we can look at them together. If they're short clips, great. And we'll just pop them up here. In fact, let me switch the audio to make sure I don't get feedback, because I think we need to talk about this. I feel like there's a lot of misinformation, and of course, as always in these protests, there's provocateurs trying to cause as much chaos as possible so that we can both remember the goal, okay? Remember the goal of politicians and parties and provocateurs in all of these kind of events is to turn us against each other so we don't see the terrorism and the crimes that government is actually committing against us. And that's you need to go into all of these things when you see oh, the left did this, oh, the right did this, oh, there was a protest, oh, there's a car burning. You really need to look at history and remember it's always the same. The government is always trying to pit people against each other so that we don't look over there at the fact that they're actually burning the world down. So the government will be like, hey, look, a guy's burning a trash can while they're burning down your Constitution, your freedom, and the freedom of your grandchildren. It's a distraction. It's a very powerful distraction, and it works really well. So put me your links. I want to see if you guys have been watching anything or you see anything that's significant, drop it in there. I have a few things that we can look at here as you guys pop in there to the live stream. I got the chat here and we will see what's going on. I'm just kind of checking things out here. And okay. Let me bring up this video. There's a pretty active live stream over here. It's a mainstream news stream, of course. So I was watching that. What I want to do is go through a little bit of this information and then kind of break this out for a short-ish video because I don't want to go super long because this is all just kind of happening. So I thought, okay, we should go live. We should go live right now and talk about this. Let's switch screens over a little bit. I just want to flip through this.
Intersection.
Hang on, let's see where this live stream's been going for like 6 hours, right?
It really looks like he was targeting folks and trying to hit him with his vehicle.
Everybody's mad on all sides. But if you go back to earlier today, what you see, and this is where you always got to go back. Don't go to how something ends. Go to how it began. What are people doing, right? People are protesting.
A safe zone in front of the Metropolitan Detention Center and the federal building on Alameda. Maybe a temple on the south end.
As this starts, I'm going to turn off the audio here so we can just kind of flip through a little bit. When these things start, there's a protest, right? Inevitably, there's people that just want to loot and make trouble. And then there's people that take advantage of it. There's provocateurs from the government because chaos is how they make it work. And so what happens is then government comes in, and we're going to see this here. We're going to recap this in a few minutes. Government comes in and they escalate. Okay? And so you have simps for the government for example, that say things like illegal is illegal, right? In the chats, right? These people are there, and they're very. There's a little difference from provocateurs, but they're usually online, right? They're there to defy the Constitution, to destroy the rule of law, right? By using propaganda words like illegal is illegal. There's literally no such thing as an illegal immigrant. It's not in the Constitution. It's not in the law. It's a made-up term that was invented by government criminals so they could control us and use fear to control us. All immigration restrictions are illegal. I don't even need to take arguments on that tonight. I'll link my main article on that I spent years researching, that's backed by history and all the facts and all the congressional reports and all the founding fathers, and it makes it very clear that everything ICE does is illegal. Okay, so what I want to do, let me mark this, because I'm going to do a cutout of this later, okay, as we get in here. And I want to see your guys' thoughts on this, and we can talk about it. But one thing that we're really not here to talk about today is whether these people are illegal. There's no such thing. Being illegal means you committed a crime. A crime is something like you steal from someone, you hurt someone. This rhetoric, and especially the rhetoric that's been pushed this year by the new criminal administration, I understand the last administration were criminals also, is that, these are criminals, these are illegal, these are the worst of the worst. None of that's actually been happening. That was all a sham. It's not worst of the worst. It's hardworking fathers, it's families, it's mothers. That's who they're going after, because it's low-hanging fruit. They're not going after the worst of the worst. They're not going after rapists and serial killers. That's never what it was about. It was always about fear and control, okay? So, let's get into this. Welcome to the Gavin Seim Show. LA is in a battle right now, right? There's a battle going on in LA, and I heard about this afternoon, and then I started seeing things, like the live streams and stuff like that. And I've been flipping through these live streams that have been going on all afternoon. I want you to look here, okay? And I'm just randomly flipping through. I didn't have any of this prepared. What happens when people protest? They rightfully get pissed at government. Government is trampling their rights, the Constitution, all the deportations, the immigration restriction, all of it is forbidden by the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the Sixth Amendment, the history of the United States, the words of the Founding Fathers. I'll put a link to my study that I did over 5 years of compiling information. That's why none of the Patriot Shield YouTubers will debate me, because there's absolutely no way they're going to win in a debate. All they can do is repeat the propaganda lines like they're terrorists, they're illegal, respect the law. If the government was respecting the law, number one, the federal government wouldn't be trying to take control of the National Guard. Understand that the National Guard is really the state guard. The feds are not supposed to control the National Guard. There's been a few times, and it happens very rarely. I think the last time it happened was in the 60s. The federal government, as a rule, is not supposed to meddle in the state and call up their state guard unless it's requested by the state governor. Now, we could do a whole video on National Guard and how the government just uses them as another branch of police / military combined to abuse people, because they can't directly send the military onto the streets, because that's also illegal. So what they do is they use the National Guard, which is actually just a military group now, and illegally send them out to suppress people. But I want to focus on kind of the fundamentals. You see these protests, and people are going out, and look here, go to earlier on today, right? This is like, 6 hours ago. This is this afternoon. Who's pointing guns? Yeah, these are probably less lethal, but who's waged for war here, right? Who are the criminals? Who are the criminals that you see in this blurry photo here? Always look at where these things start. LA is admittedly oftentimes kind of off the charts and out there, but that's not the topic tonight. The topic tonight is that LA has the balls to stand up to ICE, because ICE is a criminal organization. They're terrorizing people. They have no authority, and people have every right to resist them as they would any other terrorist or any other criminal kidnapping people off the streets. I want you to hear that clearly. And I actually made a few posts on my personal Facebook page, and my other Facebook pages about this too. This is important, because all this premise is on the idea that, ICE needs to be there. ICE is enforcing the law. Wrong. The Immigration and Nationality Act, the deportations, all of these are blatantly unconstitutional. The Constitution is very clear about our rights when it comes to travel, about the rights of all being created equal, about the fact, and this is the big one, the federal government is not granted any authority whatsoever over immigration in the Constitution. Now, even if you disagree with me on that, the terror on the streets that's being carried out by ICE has to be stopped. Okay, they are a threat to freedom in every possible way. These are Gestapo. These are people breaking into people's houses in the dark of night that have committed no crime and tearing their fathers and mothers and children from their homes. These are the worst of the worst. These are terrorists. And so now I want to be clear, like when we resist, we try and do it with as much peace as possible. Throughout this day, we see cars burning and things like that. But you have to understand that if no cars are burning, the government will send provocateurs in to get cars burning. Every protest everywhere all over the world. I think it's interesting because in the US, they use this as an example of like, it's so lawless. If you go to Latin America, cars burning, Molotov cocktails being thrown at government buildings, government cars, this is normal protesting. In most of the world, once the government crosses the line, this is normal protesting. It's dangerous because I know it can easily go too far. It can easily go into a lynch mob. But let's just say it. People disabling ICE vehicles is no different than if protesters were disabling the jail wagons of the slave patrol. Than if they were cutting their horses loose in the dark of night so they couldn't chase escaped slaves. Okay? ICE is an organization that is human trafficking and destroying the Constitution and human rights. People resisting them, I'm not saying to use violence, I'm saying that people resisting them and impeding them, ICE should be impeded in every moral way possible, right? In every peaceful way possible. And so when you come to these protests and people in LA are saying, we've had enough of this. Now I get that people get out of control and they do things and they destroy private property. I'm never in favor of that in terms of just like randomly destroying things. But let's get real. The Boston Tea Party was destroying private property. Our founding fathers absolutely protested in the way that you see today in LA. Now, they may have knew what they were doing better. They may have had more conscience behind it, but probably not. Humans haven't really changed. The Boston Tea Party was the destruction of private, more or less corporate property in protest. So let's come back to these like live videos and stuff like that. Why is it that illegals are called illegals? It's just a random made-up word because there's no constitutional authority given to the government to declare them illegal or to impede their travel in any way or to prevent or control immigration in any fashion whatsoever. Not only does the Constitution make it clear, the Founding Fathers make this clear. So you see these protests. Who's the aggressor at this point in the protest? I don't see the people over here with guns and tear gas and army suits on, right? And so as you go forward, right, and the news is reporting, obviously with their slant. That's why I'm not even going to put their audio or anything. Things are getting a little wilder. But what happens is, here's like a burning vehicle. I think it was an automated vehicle, one of these automated corporate vehicles. And I'm not saying this is good, but these things happen in protests. But anytime you're violating life, liberty, and property of an individual person who's not guilty of anything, then you're getting off the rails. But what happens is government, if this isn't happening enough in a protest, governments will typically send in provocateurs to start and agitate those kind of things because people are followers. Somebody agitates and starts burning cars, for example, other people will get in on the action, so to speak. This is how human nature and mobs work. So protests can very quickly turn into a mob on both sides, right? But if you look at the comments here in my video, those of you that aren't up to speed and don't follow me and haven't studied the Constitution, and people say things like, there's nothing illegal or unconstitutional about removing illegal non-citizens. There absolutely is. Because illegal non-citizens cannot exist under the Constitution. The Constitution gives absolutely zero authority over immigration to the government. It forbids them from restricting it, and it furthermore forbids specifics like taking people's property, their person, without due process, without a warrant, without a trial, by jury, of their peers. So that would be other immigrants in this case. So everything they're doing, like people are parroting government propaganda on both sides. ICE is a terrorist organization. They must be stopped, just like the Nazi Gestapo needed to be stopped. Remember when we were young and we thought like, oh, I would have done something if the Gestapo was kicking in my neighbor's door? It's happening again. Because some of these people are being dragged out of their houses and literally sent to death camps in other countries that have no due process. Everything about this is unconstitutional. And it's not a Democrat or Republican thing, right? I was saying this same stuff when Biden was in office, because he did it a little more undercover and under the radar. He wasn't like mocking the immigrants as they abused him, but the abuse was still there. Okay? So anyone parroting the status, the nationalist propaganda, the NWO propaganda of immigrants, they're invaders, we have to restrict immigration, we have to control immigration. This was never the case in American history. The idea of restricting immigration was laughable. It was ridiculous to the founding fathers, as it should be. And any free nation that's restricting immigration is not a free nation. They're a police state. Now, I realize there's levels, right? Because most countries now have followed suit. But most of this started to come about in the middle 1900s and then the 70s and the 80s with the drug war. It was all invented propaganda. And then it really went to high level after 9/11, after they used all of that to take our freedoms away and make everyone a terrorist. Then they use that immigration. It never had anything to do with immigration. They've always known that real bad guys are not stopped by immigration restrictions. They never are. The real big bad guys always have ways. In fact, most of the time when you talk about drug trafficking and the terrorists and things like that, someone in the government or government agencies are actually involved and supporting them. Remember, a lot of the world's biggest terrorist organizations that are flamed about in the news were either created and or trained by the U.S. government. What the U.S. government does is be a wrecking ball. They create chaos, violence, terror, and fear behind the scenes with our tax dollars, violating, killing. Go look at places like the countries that they've interfered in and caused wars in Latin America and across the world, that they depose their presidents, that they make them out to be terrorists. So you have to understand that when the government is telling you something about, when the government uses the word terrorist, it's a mirror. They're the terrorists in virtually every case. Go look at a country like, there was one I was watching a video on the other day, and I forget, Puerto Rico. The U.S., Puerto Rico is claimed to be a client state of the U.S., but they don't get all the rights, they don't get this. But it's BS. We didn't help Puerto Rico, we conquered Puerto Rico. We murdered them, we took their stuff, we took their resources, and then we said, hey, if you guys be good, right, you can be halfway Americans. Of course, they already were Americans. So is Mexico, so is Puerto Rico, Colombia, Argentina, all Americans. Okay? So when you look at statists promoting this stuff, and then let's come back, right? Let's look at the stuff that's happening. Look at the news. You have National Guard. National Guard is not supposed to be out there. The federal government is not because it's supposed to be grabbing National Guard. They're a military group. And they're using them, they're bypassing the idea of not having military on the streets by kind of putting National Guard into this in-between state. California didn't ask for the National Guard to be called up. The federal government is not supposed to be calling up the National Guard. The term National Guard is used because the federal government has always wanted to take more and more control, but these are actually the state guard, right? And that was how it was supposed to be since the very beginning. These are the state guard, and actually the federal government has not called up the National Guard in a state without the governor of that state requesting it since like the 60s. That alone is a big deal because it's a major breach of states' rights, which are also firmly upheld in the Constitution. And so as you go through all these videos and you see everybody kind of portraying their side, do I support, people burning the cars of private people? Of course not. But you have to understand that a lot of times when that's happening, it's not the group of protesters that showed up. People show up to either directly take advantage of the situation or they're actually paid provocateurs from the government. Because by creating the chaos, they divert the attention from the real message. What's the real message? You guys are kidnappers. You're stealing our people. You're stealing our employees, our families, our friends off the street. They've committed no crime. No, immigrating is not a crime, even if you don't have papers. And they're absolutely right. Immigration cannot be a crime. crimes are where you do things to people, you hurt people. They push this narrative of, oh, we're just going for the worst of the worst, right? We're just going for the worst of the worst. We're going to get out there and we're going to stop the bad guys, right? Who's the government actually waging war on? The working class, the poor, the people that show up to support them, right? You look at this. Who's the criminals here? Who's the bad guys? Look at these guys. These guys are protesting. These guys are coming in beating them with batons. Who is the provocateur here, you guys? This is bullcrap. These guys over here in battle suits are the provocateurs. These guys supporting the government, ICE, are the provocateurs. And so if people are disabling ICE vehicles, if people are making it so ICE cannot terrorize the streets, that's resistance. That's fighting for freedom. Not joining the army, guys. That's fighting for freedom. And we should be doing it with as much peace as possible. But you watch these protests, and as these protests evolve, the government comes in, they start clubbing and beating and arresting and tackling people. They come in with more resources and more power and more guns, right? The government comes in and they provoke and incite people to react. And then when people react, they say, look, they're criminals. Who's that make the terrorists? The people that are there protesting and resisting and sometimes pushing maybe too far? Or the government that violated the law, violated people's rights, violated the Constitution, violated the right to travel, violated the right to due process, and did all of that and simply said, it's the law, if you don't do it, you're an illegal. When the actual law, this right here, the actual law, the Constitution says no. End of story. Go read it if you're too ignorant. Turn off the stupid news from whatever party you believe in. Stop being a simp, a boot-licking, cock-sucking simp for the police, the military, and whatever party you support, and grow a pair. You haven't studied the Constitution. You haven't studied U.S. history. You haven't studied how to love your neighbor. You haven't studied justice. You don't know what it means to be a refugee. You don't know what it means to have to fight for something because you're lazy, cowardly simps and your forefathers did it for you. And you're their grandchildren and their great-great-grandchildren. And here you are sucking the boots of the very people that they made a revolution against. So don't even kid yourself that if you're supporting ICE, if you're supporting these soldiers on the streets rounding people up, don't even kid yourself that you're a patriot. You're a state-worshipping, boot-licking simp who's been so brainwashed by the propaganda party that you don't even have enough brain cells to get your sludge up off the floor and read this and crack a history book. And so forgive me if I'm a little rude tonight. But I see so many people, and I see a lot of people that actually do want peace and law and order and don't really like what's being done to the immigrants. But they fall for this because they always make these protests go in a direction so they can get good shots to make the protesters look like they're out of control psychos. I got news for you guys. In all places throughout history, protesters block roads, protesters throw things at police, protesters burn police cars. This is what happens. And frankly, if we're being honest, when this doesn't happen occasionally, that's how you get a real revolution. If people don't resist a little bit and push hard and put a bit of fear in government now and then and make them turn, ICE should be turning tail and running for their lives. Because they are criminals, and they must be treated like criminals if we are to have law and order in a country. You cannot have rogue agents that are little more than Gestapo kidnapping, beating, and rounding up people on the street with threats, violence, intimidation, and coercion when you have a law that says people have a right to be left alone, you don't touch them without a warrant, you don't imprison them without due process. You don't do any of it without a trial. They have a right to travel, and there is no permission to restrict that travel, not even in an immigration sense, granted to the government of the United States. That's the law. If you don't like that, you are the lawless one. You are the supporter of criminals. And so don't take some kid throwing a Molotov cocktail in an ICE vehicle and say, look, they're inciting violence. Wrong. The government, the police, the people with batons, they came and they incited violence. They incited fear. They incited chaos. They incited lawlessness. They were pointing the guns at people. They were shooting people with gas. They were shooting people with rubber bullets. They were creating fear and terror in communities, in houses, in businesses, and for hardworking people who are busting their butt to take care of their families. You cock-sucking little simps. Just shut up. And I still love you. But you don't have a voice in freedom if you're supporting this stuff. And somebody needs to tell you. And you ain't going to get it on the conservative radio shows. The left is going to give you their propaganda. I'm giving you a view with no faction. And that's what I have to say. Go watch these videos. Go watch these videos. Everybody's saying, oh, these protesters are out of hand. I mean, I'm seeing Facebook posts and people are sharing this stuff. And I'm like, okay, I guess, yeah. You got this guy. You got this scumbag here, right? He's threatening to arrest the mayor and the governor. Now, I'm not saying that these state officials are good guys. California politicians are also criminals. I get that. But this guy,
has never been
just acting like an all-American country boy, this guy,
President Trump sent a National Guard.
Sits at the head of the Gestapo, who is terrorizing people. Do not mistake a guy that looks like an old grandpa in a ball cap.
Protests to see what's happening.
Don't confuse him.
Protesters making threats.
This is what a terrorist looks like today.
Officers. Now, just recently, in the last hour, you got protests with Molotov cocktails. The protesters
I wonder why.
are purposely trying to overwhelm law enforcement. President Trump's being the national.
That's right. That's right. ICE needs to be overwhelmed. ICE needs to be stopped nationwide. Californians had the balls to do it. That's what I see. Again, not promoting the destruction of private property. I know these protests kind of get out of hand. I know people get unruly. I know a lot of the people. You have a few leaders, right? I've been at the front of these protests. You have leaders, but then you have people behind and people beside you, and some of those trying to come in and they just want to have a party. I get it. I've led marches of thousands of people, guys. I've been there. And it's very important for the leaders to stay focused on values and principles and peace. But
again,
this guy,
I want to be clear. Not
this
just to protect
Tom
the law
Homan guy,
enforcement officers, to protect this community. Because people are going to get injured. I'm telling you, the rhetoric is so high against ICE officers in this city. It's a matter of time before someone gets seriously hurt.
You said killed earlier today.
Absolutely.
right? So what he's setting up for, what this scumbag is setting up for, is that they will kill people and then justify it. Because no one's killing cops, right? People are saying the rhetoric against ICE in the city, the rhetoric against ICE should be worldwide. ICE is human traffickers. ICE is lawless. ICE is destruction of the Constitution. And the people calling ICE the Gestapo are absolutely correct in historical context because they're pulling the same crap. So resist. Stop falling for the propaganda. Don't abuse other people. Don't ever be part of a lynch mob. Always pick people up when you can. Don't throw them down. But sometimes, and in the case of ICE, these criminals, these dogs roaming our street, they got to turn and run the other way. We got to run them out of our cities. And they have to be not welcome in the cities across the United States before there can be a semblance of freedom, of the Fourth Amendment, of the Fifth Amendment, of due process. That's the reality. That's history. And the people telling you otherwise are either willing you, deceiving you, or they haven't studied history. Because this is not the first time this kind of stuff has happened. All right, you guys. Just had to throw it out there. Peace. Okay, let me come back to your comments, because that was my main statement here that I wanted to kind of be able to cut out later. But, and you know, I get a little harsh sometimes, but I really have a short fuse when it comes to abuse, right? I can listen to a lot of BS. But when it comes to people's lives being destroyed, that's another level. I'm going to just flip through comments here. And now, because I wasn't actually looking. You know how I am when I get in a roll here on the show, guys. All right, and I don't want this to go too long. Government loves crime. That's who loves crime more than anyone is government. The drug war, government, you know, pretty much all the violence and chaos in the world right now was created by government. The drug addictions, the fentanyl, the drug war, the instability of countries, the collapse of regimes. It's almost always orchestrated by government, and very often the U.S. government. especially in this part of the world, but even in the Middle East and places like that. Okay, so you have countries like Israel committing genocide. Then you have countries like the U.S. backing them up and sending them our money, while the same politicians are saying they're going to be saving you money, and we're literally funding their war crimes. That's not law. That's not law. All right. And most of the people talking about this are like America, America. If you don't even know what America, I'm in America. Mexico's America. Colombia's America. The United States is America. Canada's America. If you don't even know what America is, please stop. Because you really sound stupid. I always know when someone's just repeating what their propaganda master said. Because they're like, America. And I'm like, I can't hear America clearly coming out of your mouth. I think you're trying to say USA, but because of the dick in your mouth, I can't hear you. And it's rough sometimes to hear. Okay? People sneaking in to the country are not coming here to play baseball and eat apple pie. They literally are. That's literally bull crap. People that are real criminals can find ways to get in. It's not that hard. The people in mass going to the US are quite literally coming to work and play baseball and eat apple pie. And so, again, this is rhetoric. This is rhetoric created by terrorists and their supporters. And those terrorists work in the government. Those terrorists are people like ICE. Those terrorists are people like police forces that want to keep people in fear. Okay? Those terrorists are people like this border czar guy. This, what is the name of this scumbag? This Tom Homan guy. And the irony is these are the guys in church on Sunday, right? Go to church and these guys will be singing next to you, talking about Jesus and forgiveness and kindness and loving your neighbor. And they're the most vile human beings on the face of the earth. All right? And so, yeah, and for any of the simps in here saying that, like, that immigration restrictions are allowed, here's the article. I'm going to drop it in right here and save it. Bookmark it. It's there for you guys. Shut up about it. Just shut up. You have nothing to say until you read it. You will not find arguments that get around it. All you'll be able to come back and do is insult me and do rhetoric, because it's the Federalist Papers, it's the Founding Fathers, it's the First Congress. I've studied all of it, and way, way more than any of you. I don't mean to sound arrogant, but I've been passionate about this. I've been telling you guys about this stuff for like 8-10 years. This is when a lot of the conservatives turned against me, as I said, no, I'm for liberty. I'm not left. I'm not right. I'm not just for guns. I'm for everybody. And when I started coming out in defense of the immigrant years ago, they turned against me because I wouldn't hate the people they hated. And these same people are still so filled with rhetoric and hate and government dick all the way down their throat that they literally cannot focus their eyes enough to read a book. It's wild. It's wild to watch. And I hope that people that are in this state, and if you're in this state, that you'll not just take me being frustrated, but you'll actually take it to heart and be like, wait, am I being manipulated? Because I promise you are. I promise you are. They can do it legally like any other country. Again, more propaganda. Those of you that are commenting this, you're not coming up with these things. You're literally just repeating, because I always hear the same ones. That's why most of these are addressed in the article. You'll see most of the lines that you repeat in the article here that I've written, and I always reference people to so I don't have to argue, because you're not coming up with these lines. They're just being programmed into your brain so that you're sheep that repeat them. There is no coming to the U.S. illegally. Read my lips. The Constitution does not permit the government to restrict immigration in any way. All immigration laws are illegal. Even if immigration laws were illegal, and the argument of, they're doing it all over the world, that's because we've all been copying each other. They didn't used to. That's not what free countries do, you guys. But even if you could make the statement that some immigration controls were necessary, the abuse, the deportations without due process, the rounding people up absolutely would not be. And almost no other country does that. Mexico has immigration laws. They're also an abuse of human rights, but they're not enforced really. It has an open border. Right? If you do something that catches attention, you cause trouble, sure, they might deport you. It happens. They do deport people. A lot of the people getting deported in Mexico, for example, they just want a free ride back to their country because, they want to go. They're tired. It didn't work out here, whatever. So that happens too. I've actually talked to people that were in the refugee offices and stuff down here about that. And they said, yes, because one day I was at the immigration office for my refugee status, And I was pissed and filming the immigration officers because they were taking some people out to deport them. And the guy from Refugee came down and he's like, calm down, let's go talk. And it's weird because they were treating them nothing like ICE does, right? They were like, no one was handcuffed. It was like, mothers, and they had their daughter and she was carrying her doll and they were walking out to a van. And I was like, oh, you guys don't have a right to deport. And this was Mexico that I was doing this, right? And so he took me upstairs and sat me down, the guy from the refugee office, and he's like, look, we offer these people. Now, I'm not, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that there's not corruption and that there's not abuse in the immigration in Mexico and other countries. But he said to me, he literally pulled a folder out and he said, look, we ask these people before we deport them, do you want to enter the refugee process? You have that right? And here's the paper where they signed, right? That they're not seeking refugee status. Now, these people, if they're deported, the border's open on the south, right? So let's say they're from Guatemala. They just come back whenever they feel like it. But it's all a scam. Deporting people is a scam. It's just a waste of resources under the name of protecting people, and it does nothing to protect people. So don't get me wrong. There was just a clear difference in how they handled those people and how they respected those people compared to what we see in the United States. And what's happening is all these countries, the United States literally bribes the politicians of Mexico and gives them millions of your tax dollars to try and get them to also make immigration programs that are similar to the US's. That's why these exist in the first place. And even at that, if you go down to Guatemala, you can just pay a few bucks and get a boat across the river. It's an open border. There's no fence. There's no wall, nothing. That's reality, okay? But people aren't living in reality today. People are living in whatever side of the propaganda that they want to promote, right? And here's a police, is this a nice car? Because, if it is, here's a nice car that can't traffic anyone today. Police are waging war. There's not a war on police. ICE is waging war on the Constitution. Police who stand beside them and support them are waging war on the Constitution. They are the enemies of the people. It's not, the idea is to protest and resist, sometimes even a little strongly, so you don't have a violent revolution. And this is what people don't understand about history, guys. That's how you avoid a violent revolution, is by putting fear in the government every now and then and pushing them back. Because governments will always get created, they'll always come about, and you have to have this routine. Okay? There are no illegal human beings. There are only illegal acts. Listen to me. Hear it. We're supposed to have freedom. And everybody's saying, oh, we have a right to due process. We have a right to travel. We have a right to be left alone in our persons, papers, properties, things, houses. No warrants have to exist before you invade those. And then it's like, oh, but I don't like that guy, so that doesn't apply to him. That's nonsense. We hold these truths that all men are created equal. And if you go to the article, and I'll link it again for those who are still simping for government, so they just shut up and go read a little bit of history. Any argument for restricting immigration and deporting people is debunked in this article. I spent years compiling this information. You're not going to beat me in an argument. You're not going to beat me by repeating the rhetoric that was fed to you from a politician's dick in your mouth. It's not going to happen, because I've actually done my research and learned that aside from caring about people, respecting people, human rights, loving your neighbor as yourself, aside from all that, the law forbids everything ICE and the government and the deportation agencies are doing. That's the law. If you don't like it, it's not my problem. And you look at guys like hindsight 2020. This guy does not have 2020. He doesn't even know what an American is. And he's never even read enough of history to know that our founding fathers were clear in the literal declaration, which, yes, is part of our laws, guys. It's what started it all. It says all men are created equal. Now, did the founding fathers immediately abuse that, right? Did they abuse it with slavery? Yes. Did they do the same crap? Yes. I think that's why we're here today, is because of that hypocrisy. But the laws are very clear. So no matter how much these people simp for their masters, it's never going to make them free. They're not actually going to get rewarded for it, most of them. They're just the stooges for these psychopaths. And it's really sad to watch. It's really sad to watch. But until these people And let's just turn them off. If you can't argue real, don't enter the chat, guys. Don't enter the chat, okay? Because it's very clear. People are trying to make arguments, and I'm saying, okay, I've addressed your arguments. Here it is, laid out, written, clear, with my word on it. Go validate it. Go prove me wrong. I'll debate any of these people, whether it's the Patriot nurse or some talk show host. If you have an active channel or show or radio show, I'll debate you. I don't care if it's this pathetic border czar terrorist Tom Homan. I'll sit on a radio show with him and I will mop the floor with his rhetoric. Because it's not law. It's criminal. So that's just my thoughts on what's going on with all this stuff. It's sad to see when things start getting out of control, but you know what? They're trying to portray it as out of control. LA is standing up and saying, we're done with you, ICE. You're not welcome here. They have every right to do it. ICE should be afraid. ICE should be run out of town. And then they should be run out of the country. If anyone should be getting deported to a prison, it's the people who work for ICE. But even then, I want them to get due process too for their crimes. But their crimes are very, very real. What else can I say? What else can I say? If you support terrorism, if you support ICE, you support the destruction of the Constitution and law, you're the enemy of America. You're the enemy of freedom. And may your chains rest lightly upon you. Because that's what you're going to get. All right, you guys, I'm going to go because I could just rant all night. I've made the point. I'll let you guys chew on it in the comments. I'll put a link to all the arguments for immigration controls and deportations crushed, not by my opinion, but by actual U.S. history, the Constitution, what the Founding Fathers said, and facts. If you can't debate me on that, I'm not debating you. Have a nice night. Love your neighbor as yourself. Peace.